the spinach? Yes. Yeah, I'll do the spinach quiche. Hi, I'm Shelly Young. I work for Advanced Hospice. I'm the community educator, and I love going out into the community because I teach in board and cares, skilled nursing facilities, subacute hospitals, you name it, RCFE facilities. I actually we'll do luncheons like this too. Public events at libraries, we bring in the public. I love talking about nutrition because it seems to be everybody's kind of a foodie these days, and there's lots of fad diets out there, and I really kind of want to not really talk about the fad diets, but more about just like going back to the basics about just plain old nutrition. And the other thing too that I really enjoy with my job, because I was listening to you about helping with caregivers. I do a lot of caregiving stress management classes. I love educating residents, especially for people who are living in long-term care or the ALFs, the assisted living facilities, because they're always still wanting to learn. No matter how old they are, they're always wanting to learn. And I'm so excited that I feel like when I come out of a class, they're like, I actually learned something. And I'm thinking, how did I teach an 86-year-old something new? But we actually do, just because you're hearing it from a different venue. So anyway, with that being said, we're just going to cover nutrition. I think we passed out, if anybody didn't get papers, is there anybody that came in late? Okay. Get she a paper. Oh, another one? Okay. Yeah, those are just takeaways for you guys to go home with. As I was saying before, there's a lot of different fad diets out. I think the latest one you're hearing in social media right now is everybody's talking about the keto diet. I can tell you, just from being a nurse and being in healthcare for as long as I have, is that everybody has a different body type. Everybody has a different blood type. I've had friends that have become vegetarian and they've become very ill because they didn't have the right blood type, and it landed them in the hospital. Before anyone would ever go on a special diet or a fad diet, I would really recommend that you have a chat with your physician about it before you do so. Just because some of the supplements that we take, some of the things that we mix up, and the things that we put in our body can actually affect medication that we're taking. It can affect our blood type. It can and really make us ill if we're not careful about it. I think social media also really bargains on doing the push of look how much weight you're going to lose if you do this. Yeah. They really push that. So I just kind of wanted to put that disclaimer out there, is you always want to talk to your physician before you take on any kind of like really special diet that's different and new. So I'm going to go over some basic elements of nutrition today, and also kind of understanding what makes up a balanced diet. One of the things that we're working very heavily with, especially in senior living facilities, is try to get proportion control. I grew up in a generation where you had to eat everything on your plate before you get up. And so what happens is when folks get a little bit older, they still have that memory in their mind. And quite often, older patients will actually push away the plate because mentally they know they can't eat all of that. And they also grew up in an era where I save everything. So you're going to put it in the fridge and save it for me for later, right? Without even communicating that, that's all gone on in their brain, and they're actually pushing their plate away. So caregivers quite often say, I can't get my resident or my patient to eat, and I don't understand why. Well, you're giving them a big old plate of food, that's why. One, they are not expending that energy. They don't need anywhere near that level of food. And the other thing is because a lot of us are foodies here in America, we love the flavor of food, and it's a social experience, and we like eating. And maybe we eat a little too much, because in reality, our stomachs are about the size of our, what you fit in the palm of your hand. If you heard that, I say like a fist or whatever. And I think that even with that being said, sometimes it's not about the choice, it's about the portion. So quite often you hear also with these fad diets, oh, don't have carbs, or don't have sugar, or don't have this. The problem is your body needs all of it. It needs fats, it needs the carbs, it needs sugar, it needs all of that, proteins, in order to be a really fine-oiled machine. But the idea is not doing everything every day. So it's about portion control, and it's also about doing things in moderation. So she had a lovely muffin here. What'd you call it? Butter spice. Those muffins are great, but if I ate that every day, that would probably not be really good for my sugar level. So doing things when we're having a nice meal and doing things in moderation, we have to think that that's okay. but quite often it's about the amount that we put on our plates. So just to go over some specific things as far as, come on. I have a computer that looks at these. Sorry about that. My computer's not wanting to go forward. Anyway, I'll go forward. When we're talking about like calorie counting, I think that calorie counting became a big deal, I guess in the 80s and 90s, you know, oh, don't go over so many calories per day. Well, as we age, our calorie intake actually becomes less because we're not as active. You know, when I'm running around and I'm 15, I can consume 2,400 to 3,000 calories in a day, and I'm going to burn through all of it. But in actuality, as we get older, we really only need about 2,000 calories per day, depending on our activity level. So quite often we adjust our calories based on how active we are. And men will typically be about 400 calories more, or even 1,000 calories more per day, depending on how active they are. And so you have to keep that concept in mind. Even at the age of 40, if we eat the same thing at 40 that we do when we're younger, we are going to start to gain weight if we're not as active, and also our metabolism slows down. The metabolism slows down because we're not producing as much saliva. The saliva we need for digestion, it helps break down food, and everything works a little bit slower. Okay, so the motility is slower, our immune system, everything is slower when we get older. So always keep that in mind. If you're going to be active, walking on a treadmill or hiking, or you love to turn, you're into biking. Quite often I'll hear with older folks is that I hike, I bike, and I still gain weight. What the heck is going on? The problem is that we have to go back to what you're actually putting in your body. Okay, and if we break that down nutritionally, and we're thinking about protein, and we're thinking about vegetables, and we're thinking about fruits and juices and those sort of things, that's all good and well, but we have to actually burn off more than we're taking in. Have you guys ever heard that? Dr. Phil had a great saying. He was like, if you want to lose it, you got to move it. And that is very, very true. But the one big thing about nutrition that a lot of folks don't talk about is your water consumption. How many water people do I have here? Nice. So water is huge when it comes to our digestion and also to our nutrition. Especially if as I'm getting older, my taste buds are changing, maybe I'm on medication, I'm not as hungry as I was before. But the one thing that my body can't do without is water. I absolutely have to have water. Any guesses on how many cups of water a day we lose just walking around? Just like the equivalent of how many cups of water a day you lose, just living.
4 cups.
Higher.
Wow.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, higher.
I was gonna say 10.
Yes, who said 10? Yes, that's exactly what.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I think
But
we
if we
deserve
don't drink
that.
enough water.
So let me address that. So if you lose 10 cups of water a day, we lose that through breathing, through humidification of the air. We lose that in our tears. We definitely lose it in our sweat, and we lose it when we do number 1 and number 2. We're constantly losing fluid. So imagine I'm a person who doesn't really like water throughout the day, but I also have to take a few vitamins, I have to take maybe some blood pressure medicine and some other things. The problem with not drinking enough water during the day, I'm already in the hole by the time I wake up in the morning, right? If I haven't had at least 8 to 10 glasses of water per day. And we also live in California, which is a super dry state. And when we live here, we have to really be cognizant of it being 100 degrees outside, and if we're working out and we're sweating. There's always somebody at the state fair who's got an ambulance, EMTs, or starting an IV to give them fluids and whatnot. Dehydration is a really important component of nutrition because it absolutely has to exist. If you really, really want to feel punky and sick, don't drink enough water for a period of time and you will land in the hospital. It's one of the number 1 things that people go to the emergency room for is dehydration. I used to do a lot of IVs at UC Davis for it too. They get caught on the other side and they just start, and it goes beyond that. So whether it's food poisoning or like the flu or something like that, or if they have loose bowels, we don't want to talk about that while you're eating, but if they have that, then they lose a lot of fluid. So the idea behind water is if you're not particularly fond of it, is nowadays people are infusing it with fruit. So they're putting like cucumbers or raspberries or orange slices. I see that especially in the older communities. And guess what? They're starting to drink it because they're getting fooled. We're very visual people. So if we see something pretty and you put a straw in it, it's like, ooh, I'm gonna drink that. And it's the same stuff, you know, but I mean, you do that with our kids, right? Well, put an umbrella in it, you know, it'll be great, he'll eat it. If you can just think of it that way, try to do the water. The other thing too is it has to become habitual. Often we don't do things because we don't like it, but if we start to do it, it takes 21 days to change a habit. So if you become habitual about it and you're taking a sip, I always tell people who love to watch TV, every time a commercial comes on, take a drink. That thing will be gone in the first 10 minutes because there's so many commercials on, right? So it just, if it's always there and it's always available, then it'll have you drink that. The really fundamental reason why we need it is because you absolutely have to have your kidneys. Kidneys are not happy when they're not getting enough fluid, right? We're not getting enough water. And so if we're trying to process medication or process food, and we're not getting enough water, you'll start to get kidney infections. You can get frequent UTIs, which happen too if we're not hydrated enough. Does anybody have an idea about, like with urine, what color it should be? Clear. Almost clear, right? So you can always kind of gauge that with yourself. If it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, your vitamins are already gone. If it's still yellow, you probably had a lot of coffee, which a lot of people love to drink coffee throughout the day. They're like, I drink a lot. I've had 4 cups of coffee today. And I'm like, well, that's awesome because it's a diuretic. So you have to think in terms, I have this saying, anything that has color, you want to follow it up with something that doesn't. So if I have a cup of coffee, you want to have a glass of water. A cup of tea, glass of water, right? Because it's a natural diuretic as well. Cranberry juice, apple juice, high sugar content, we have a glass of water. So anything that has color, always follow it up, which is why people get told all the time, if you're going to drink alcohol, you want to follow it up with a glass of water, right? Because anybody who's had a headache for maybe having a little too much to drink, it's usually because they don't have enough water on board and the brain doesn't like that. I had a lady ask me once, she says, well, do I have to follow up with a glass of water? I like white wine. She goes, I can see through it. I can see through it. I said, yes, you can, but it's got a lot of sugar in it, so you should probably have a glass of water for that. So, but I thought it was very sweet that she thought that was cool to have that instead. The other thing too, you know, besides just having, you know, having water to hydrate us, it has to do with your skin as well, keeping our skin nice and plump and whatnot. The good news is that if you have someone who's just indignant and saying, I'm not going to drink water, I'm not going to do it, I've tried doing it, I don't have the habit of doing it, what you can do is make sure that they're eating fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables, believe it or not, if that's all you like, you can get about 75% of your water content from them. Isn't that pretty cool? So 75% of your water content can come from fruits and vegetables, which is quite often why hikers will bring cantaloupe and watermelon and things like the melons that have a lot of that, they're really juicy because they can get some of that you know, on board. Then again, we worry about sugar levels and making sure that we're paying attention to that. So moving past the water thing, as we age, besides our metabolism slowing down, our taste buds actually change. And quite often it can be just from aging, acid changes, saliva changes in our body, but it can also be because of illness, and it can also be because of medication. Quite often if someone's had radiation or they've had chemotherapy, it will change their taste buds. And so it's very hard for them to want to eat. And it's hard for them to perceive what they're eating if they can't taste it. And I'll give you kind of a mind teaser right now. I want all of you to think about one meal that you would say, that's my favorite meal, even though we're all foodies here, because I had like 5 meals. Think of one meal, and I want you to think about it in front of you. And it could have been from childhood, it could be your husband makes it, it could be something you make. And think about looking at that meal and how it tastes and smelling it, right? You can smell it, you're getting ready to eat it, you're super excited, this is my favorite meal. Now I'm going to blast past you just for a second and say, now I'm going to give you the worst cold you've ever had in your life. And I'm going to put that meal down in front of you and ask you if you want to eat it. Right? So when we have a cold and we can't taste, right, and we can't smell it because our noses are all stuffed up, we don't have a tendency to want that food. right? Well, as we age and our smelling starts to go away and our taste starts to go away, quite often when we have an older population, that's why it's really hard for them to eat, is because they can't taste it and they can't smell it. Does that make sense? So now y'all are thinking about that going, great, Shelly, I'm still thinking about that favorite meal.
So when I'm sick, I eat more. Like I know I have a cold coming on because all of a sudden my throat hurts and I'm starving.
Oh, yeah?
It's the weirdest thing. That's
Isn't
how I
there a
know the
saying
difference.
like fever cold, starve with fever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. I'm the only person I know like that.
Oh, sure, you can put it right there, thank you. For some reason, I don't know why my thing has decided that it just doesn't work, but anyway, we're doing fine. Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to share that when I don't know how long ago it was, it's probably been quite a while ago, that I started losing my taste buds, or at least I felt like I did. And I just need, what I love is more and more spices that I never used to eat before.
Right.
So that's.
It's a good way to trick, and that was my next thing besides your taste buds. So what do we do, right? What do we do about that? What they're doing in older communities is they're putting out paprika and thyme and rosemary and different types of spices that they're it's kind of tricking your taste buds into I can taste this, it's flavorful. But imagine being someone that has eaten really well their whole life, and maybe their mother was a great cook, and they had sauce on this, and they loved fancy food. But now they're at a point in their life where they can't really taste it, and it's not that fun anymore because it becomes a social thing too. Is that by putting some of those spices on it, they can actually taste that, because it works on a different part of our tongue. And it's actually been pretty successful at being able to do that because we want to keep salt down, right? Because especially for blood pressure issues, and you get swelling and all that kind of thing. So we're always cognizant of that too for salt and pepper. But the idea behind, eating properly, it's great concept if you can get somebody to actually eat. But the other thing is what happens if they don't eat? Those Ensures that they have, the little shakes that they make. They're packed with protein and they have vitamins and whatnot, and quite often people will use those to supplement their meals, which is fine. They do have some that have less sugar or no sugar in them that are good for diabetics. So you can get some of your nutrition through like a shake kind of supplement, or maybe even medication like a vitamin C, vitamin D, calcium, things like that. But it doesn't replace full-on food, overall for eating all the time. Everybody here like avocado? So avocado is one of those good fats, and again, what I was talking about, like trying to do things in moderation. The idea nowadays for us, because what they do is they've done studies for a very, very long time about what makes up a really good nutritious meal, okay? And what we've realized, besides our tummies being very small, is that if we break up our meals, instead of having the really big meals like we had when we were kids, like big old breakfast, big old lunch, big old dinner, is to try to spread that out throughout the day, where our body is never completely starving. Because what happens is as soon as it starts to starve, guess what? You're going to store that fat. Instead of us going ahead and eating like every couple of hours smaller amounts of food, and it keeps that metabolism burning food the whole time, and it's actually better for us. They have these wonderful Tupperware things that you can get nowadays for snacks that you can actually keep in your car, because a lot of us are working full time. It's hard for us to have a balanced meal, especially if you don't have a kitchen at work, you only have a microwave. But they do have those little Tupperwares where we can put healthy snacks, which are some examples are on your paper. You can do celery, you can do apples, you can carrots, you can do things like that. Because we have a tendency when we're really hungry is to just grab a hold of the fats. It's just easier, it's a snack, it's a bag of chips, I can wolf that down in a couple of minutes, and maybe I'm good, but then I crash, right? Because then my sugar crashes. So if you try to make better or healthier choices when we're eating throughout the day and having smaller meals, it actually will make you feel better. It's like putting really great fuel in your car. And so I try to say there's no excuse, but I have to. I go to the drive-thru every now and again and have some fries and stuff. So, but vitamins, this is another really hot topic when we're talking about nutrition, and people ask all the time, is it one a day, the calcium, what should I take as I age? What is the best vitamin? And I'm going to tell you this as a nurse, and what I told every one of our patients, you always want to talk to your physician before you take any vitamin. The reason for it is there's a lot of things over the counter that can be in those vitamins, and I'll give you an example. Do you guys remember about a year ago, I think it's about a year ago, where cranberry pills were really popular? And they were supposed to be metabolism boosters and help you lose weight, the cranberry pills. Well, not for everyone. In fact, it made a lot of our patients start taking this cranberry. Their blood pressure shot up for some reason. And their blood pressures, all of a sudden, they were coming in and they're high, and we found one commonality, and that was they were all taking these cranberry pills. So you never know with things that we're getting like over the counter at GNC, if it's been FDA approved. I will always recommend that you talk to your physician. Some of us make more iron in our blood than others. You know, women are always known for being a little anemic and not having enough iron, but some of us make more iron than we should have. So me giving advice and telling someone, oh, don't forget to take your iron, or to, you know, to eat your iron, that could be deadly to one person, right? It would not be good advice. So when they do your labs and they check your panel, usually your physician will give you a good idea about what you can do and what you're lacking in as we age. Does that make sense, you guys? So calcium and vitamin D, the one thing I will tell you about it is it really is important for bone health, right? As we age, our bones get more and more porous. I almost call them honeycomb. You know, that's why we get fractures a lot more when we get older. Some of us have plenty of calcium, others don't, and we can take calcium supplements, but it's really good for bone health. It's also good for osteoporosis, right? As we age, you know, we start to shrink a little bit, get some compression. And then the other thing too is vitamin D. You really only need vitamin D about 5 or 10 minutes a day, and that would be a walk outside, right? In 5 or 10 minutes, I've got enough vitamin D for my day. I know that we end up being more outside than that, but vitamin D you can get in vegetables. You can also get it in dairy products and milk and that sort of thing, but you can also go outside and get enough of that vitamin D. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, this is the fun one. We always talk about, in nutrition, we love to talk about fiber. Fiber is a good thing. Fiber is really a nice way for motility. I'm waiting for everybody to finish eating, but anyway, it's a nice way to fatten up our stool, right, so that we can evacuate that from our bodies. And as we age, remember I was saying that things start to slow down, the motility, the saliva and whatnot, and so we get constipated for a couple of reasons, or 3 reasons actually. We're not moving around as much, so it's lower movement, right? I'm not as mobile as I was before, so I'm not processing that through. I'm not drinking enough water, right, which we absolutely need, and I'm not having enough fiber in my diet. When we have fiber in our diet, the idea is to try to keep some consistency so that it's going through our body, but we actually have to be somewhat ambulatory in order for us to evacuate our bowels. So with that being said, there's lots of ways to get fiber. There's the one that you can, the Metamucil. You guys seen that? The thing is if you don't drink it right away, it becomes this gelatinous, she's laughing because it's like this gelatinous stuff, looks like the old lava lamps, right? And it's like a plop, you have to put it in your mouth. I know a lot of younger people that I work with, even in their 30s, they're doing fiber every day. They're doing a shot of like the Metamucil or their Benefiber, stuff like that, because they said they're trying to make sure that they aren't constipated going into their older years, which I think is pretty neat. But again, it's the water issue. The water issue can really help that. I feel like a water pusher, actually.
Yeah, we all got thirsty for water.
I know. It's better than being a drug pusher, right? Right. So, so what is the benefit of eating healthy? Because we do know that like leaner meats are better. The darker the color for vegetables are better. You know, if you're and in more of a raw form, so like the red peppers, the yellow peppers, you know, broccoli, cauliflower in a raw form is great. If you are going to cook it, the idea is to do it like al dente, and not to just like completely boil all of the vitamins and nutrients out of it. And breads, we want whole grain breads, right? Where the white ones we're trying to stay away from, but it goes back again down to portions. So a lot of us here kind of understand the concept of eating well, but the benefits of it is mental acuteness. We get a more robust immune system. We actually recover from illness faster. And I can tell you, if you have a wound or if you got a cut or something like that, it actually heals faster too. It's not just like the illness all over your whole body. And then the benefits is for heart, you know, keeping heart disease low and our risk for stroke and all that kind of stuff. So the benefits of eating better is just thinking about your cars. we kind of, you know, it's kind of a pain to take them in to get an oil change and whatnot, but imagine if we took them somewhere and somebody just poured Mountain Dew in the oil, it probably wouldn't run very well. So you have to think of yourself as kind of like a vessel to try to keep it as healthy as possible. So there's a lot of really, really great benefits from it. And then some final tips that I have just for this PowerPoint is like trying to avoid skipping meals. That's like one of the big no-nos. I love people to say, oh, I had one meal today. Okay, that's awesome. Now you're going to retain all the fat in that one meal that you had because your metabolism isn't working at all. So if you can try to think in terms of doing really small meals, maybe what you fit in your hand would be great in spreading that out throughout the day. And I don't mean like a bag of potato chips because it fit in my hand and then I'm going to have some fries here. I mean, healthy snacks that you can have. I'll mention avocado. Avocado is a great snack to have. There's hummus. Hummus is a really good one too with like carrots and celeries and that sort of thing. And just think in terms of like if I am going to snack, try to think of a healthy snack. If you've already had your meal, whether you had a lean sandwich or whatnot, think, okay, well I am going to snack in between my next meal, just make sure it's a healthy snack. And believe it or not, just trying to cut back on the amount that we're eating during those 3 meals will help you lose weight. Water does help you lose weight. It does, but usually when we lose weight, it's usually the water weight's the first thing to go, those first 3 or 4 pounds. Just so you know. A lot of people think, ooh, I'm getting on this diet. Yeah, it's just all water weight. And then, yes?
I heard something on the TV one time about drinking water first thing in the morning before you drink your coffee, and then
Yes.
then I heard drink hot water before you drink your coffee.
Any water is great.
When you
Yeah,
first
because
get
you're just cleaning that system out. Any water is great. I did want to give you kind of a concept because I wasn't able to show you the PowerPoint on the wall. 1 serving of tuna, like a can of tuna, is almost our entire protein need for the day.
Really?
1 serving of, yeah, it's about 40 grams. We need about 65 grams. 1 piece of bread is enough per day. 1 piece of bread. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I could eat a sandwich, you know, open faced sandwich. But the thing is we've just been so trained through our whole life, right? Mom made us peanut butter and jelly, or dad, you know, whatever. Or I made PB&J, or we had tuna, or we had a turkey sandwich. We're just so processed into eating the way that we have our whole lives that as we age, you got to remember that we don't need as much as we did before. Yes.
Ask you a question. I'm not real keen on, okay, I'm gonna have my great vegetables and everything for the day. So I started drinking the V8 juice and one of them a day.
That's
Is
awesome.
that a good thing? I mean,
V8s are great, but you got to be careful about the sodium content.
Yeah,
They do
that's
have
right.
they do have the low
Low
salt too. But no, that's great.
I watched my sodium very well, and then when I was in hospital, I brought a bag of
Sodium?
in, and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "You're so low."
See that's what I mean. Like all of us kind of we range very, very differently. I run very high sodium, so you have to be very careful about that.
I was just gonna say, I am fortunate I was able to get a Vitamix on sale. You know, but those things are great because you can throw in the veggies in with you don't need that much fruit to have a really good tasting drink. I just have to get in the habit of doing it.
Right.
Instead of buying the salty, you know, drinks.
Yeah.
It's really a good thing to make your own.
Right. Well, some of the you know, when I do a class like for clinical staff, we talk about is it okay for us to have sodium when we're trying to rehydrate? And the answer is yes.
Oh, no.
You don't want to completely. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and lick on a salt lick, but you can have you know the Gatorades that they have that do have some sodium content. An IV solution that's got sodium in it. The idea is that when we sweat everything. So you'll see a lot of cramping. If you're getting cramping in the back of your calves and whatnot, is usually because you're losing potassium and you're losing sodium. And you're also expending more sweat and water out of your body, expelling it, than you're taking in. Not uncommon for bikers, runners, people who hike, that they're just like, man, the back of my calves are killing me. It's probably because they haven't had enough water. and if they're sweating it all out. So we definitely don't have to avoid those things.
I wonder if you don't sweat that much or at all. Is there something you should be doing for that?
Still drinking your,
Water.
Still drinking water, because let me tell you, your kidneys, you want them all the way until the time we pass. UTIs, the number one person on the planet that gets UTIs are females. And the other, and you guys are gonna love this, the number one career is a healthcare provider. Female and healthcare providers. It's not just because anatomically we're shorter in our urethra, it is because we're always taking care of other people, and I say we're doing the pee-pee dance while we're trying to, oh, let me get your shirt on, I need to go to the bathroom for like a half hour, but that's okay, I'm gonna help you. And by the time we go, what's happening is when you retain your urine for a period of time in your bladder, it can harbor bacteria. So the idea is we're supposed to be urinating every 2 hours, if we can, every 2 to 3 hours. And the other thing too for females, just for FYI, anytime your bottoms are soaked in anything that's wet, we're supposed to try to urinate after that. Okay, so that would mean if I'm in a bath, when I get out of the bath, I need to try to use the restroom. If I'm in a hot tub, I need to try to use the restroom when I get out. If I'm swimming in a pool, if I'm in a lake, and if I'm in an ocean, because our urethra is so short, bacteria can get up in there and also sit on the bladder, which is quite often why the older population get it, is because they don't have the bladder capacity with muscle control that they did when they were younger. So the urine sits here. It's called retained urine. And then we have to start a catheter to get all of that out. It's just that urine is not supposed to sit in your bladder, but you can actually get an infection anywhere in that urinary tract, like in the kidneys, in the urethra, in the ureters. You can get it anywhere.
What's the formula again for how much water you need to drink versus your weight?
I didn't know that one.
Oh.
But what I've heard is 50% of your body weight should be in water, in ounces in water.
Right. Well, it makes sense because 50 to 65% of your body weight of your body is made up of water. So that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, 50 to 65% of us is water. Isn't that crazy? But anywho, that's all I have. Did anybody have any other questions? I love talking about food.
I just want to share something.
Yes.
In all of the years of my living and experimenting with eating and stuff, I find that if a day goes by without eating nuts, that's when I find that it's harder for me to have.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's, I just find that is, for me, it seems like, yes, it's the fiber.
Yeah, some things work for some folks and others it doesn't. I think our bowels become particularly interesting to us as we get older, because if anybody's been constipated, it's really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, especially if you haven't gone for a few days. And then you're not moving around a lot, we're not real mobile. Let's say we were in a wheelchair, it makes it really, really tough. And I really empathize with them because it's got to be really uncomfortable. But to have, good bowel movements and being able to eat the food that's going to force that to happen, usually we know, and I'm glad that nuts work for you. What's a fiber?
It's a fiber and a fat, a good fat.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fiber and a good fat.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Shelly. Everybody, thank you so much. It was wonderful.